Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Glad to have you aboard for today's edition. As a quieter Sunday, a quieter weekend overall for the Oilers as we hopefully go into a bigger week coming up starting tomorrow. But for right now, as it sits, I just wanted to go over a couple of things I'm excited to see hopefully out of the Edmonton Oilers this year. And I mean, hopefully it should be an expectation, not a hope, and we'll kind of go over that in a brief moment. But if I have a moment to grab your attention right now, if you're new to the channel, I want you to poke around the channel. I want you to comb through some of the other Oilers videos, some of the older stuff, and consider hitting that subscribe button here on the channel. And especially if you're returning for a couple of videos in a row, consider hitting that button and let's get going for what is going to be a fun NHL season upcoming from our Edmonton Oilers. Now, what are things I'm looking forward to seeing out of the Oilers? Well, number one, I think the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is a better start this year, right? Less doubt, less panic, less squirrel suits. I don't know, for some of you, you might not know the full story from earlier this season. I think we were just about 16,250 the last time you would have seen this guy out on Dolynny TV. But there was a time I dressed up in a full Halloween squirrel suit and absolutely berated the Oilers for a lack of performance through the first 15 or so games. Well, I'm hoping and I'm looking forward to that not being the case here to start this year. I think we can all agree on that one. I think that's a pretty obvious one to hope for, and I think that is one that is pretty much guaranteed it will be better than last year. At least that has to be the going theory. One would figure, because if it is the same start, my goodness, we're gonna have problems. Defense aside, there is no way possibly the Oilers can start worse than they did last year. At least fathom. I don't know. I can use all big words, but you get where I'm going. You got to figure, right? Number two, when it comes down to it for the Oilers, kind of comes down to that leave no doubt again, right? A better start is only part of an NHL season. And if the Oilers can start better, they should be able to, given their back half supremacy the past few seasons, and given the fact that they're a team that has the talent, they should be capable of producing the results. Well, guess what? Start better, finish better, you're good to go. Run the table start to finish. That's what I think. I'm expecting the Oilers. I'm hoping to see the Oilers go out there and run the table start to finish. First place in the Pacific by end of the first week. First place in the Pacific by the end of the last week in the NHL. And you have home ice advantage either throughout the playoffs or throughout the majority of the playoffs. Flip-flop the Stanley Cup final depending on who gets through, whatever the case might be. But yeah, I'm expecting the Oilers to have a good start to the year that translates to a good rest of the year that translates to first place in the Pacific Division. And it's not even, oh, well, that's just kind of how they're projecting or whatever. It is due time. It is, quite frankly, due time that they win the division. It's due time that they have home ice advantage to dominate throughout the first 3-4 rounds of the playoffs, whatever the case might be. And you know what? As many of the guys have kind of said out there in the Oilers sphere, if they would have had home ice advantage in the Stanley Cup final, the cup is ours. So, right, get up, get going, and let's get this job done this year. No more excuses. Third thing I'm looking forward to, and you can hit on this all you want, but I think it's fair enough to say, is I'm expecting a year from Darnell Nurse. I'm hoping for a year from Darnell Nurse that is much better offensively, right? Nurse has kind of regressed from a couple seasons back offensively. That comes with not being on the top power play, not being the first choice on overtime, not obviously being on the top pair anymore. But from Nurse, especially if you're putting Emerson next to him, who again we continue to hear just absolute amazing things out of anybody that knows the kid, it really comes down to Nurse should be able to not worry about his own defensive gaps, and a guy like Cody Ceci who's playing next to him, who at times would have gaps as well. So you're not having two guys to cover up with, both guys trying to cover each other and themselves. Instead, Nurse just has to worry about being responsible with rushing up the ice, responsible with getting caught deep, and really just as long as you're maintaining that and Emerson's tying down the other side, and the Oilers forwards are committed to the defensive structure a bit more, which we've seen over the past year under Paul Coffey, then we should be able to see Darnell Nurse's points increase a little bit here to above 40 again, and that kind of gets everybody going. When you're more than a half point per game defenseman at 9.25 million, the complaints will go from here down to here a little bit, and the quieter it gets around Darnell Nurse, the more steady I feel like the Oilers kind of positivity, the Oilers news cycle is, right? When you don't have to worry about Darnell Nurse's contract because of lack of production, because of defensive gaffes, well, all of a sudden there's a lot less things to pick at with the Oilers, and it gets to be talking about how they do better from a positive standpoint than a negative standpoint, and that's huge. I will tell you that. I much prefer when we're praising Darnell Nurse at 9.25 than knocking him. So that's where we're hoping for a good offensive production season for Nurse. And I mean, a second line with Draisaitl, Skinner, and Arvidsson should help with that as well. You figure Nurse and Emerson would be likely to get a little bit more time with those guys, and you're almost splitting two top lines essentially. I mean, look back over the Oilers' past 12 years. A top line of Jeff Skinner, Leon Draisaitl, and Victor Arvidsson would be a top line even in the McDavid era a lot of the years out of a lot of the years. So if you're separating McDavid and Draisaitl. So that's pretty crazy to think, but I'm glad to see it happening, and I mean, that should only benefit Darnell Nurse, and that's one thing I'm hoping to see. That's a hope. I'm not expecting it, because you expect excitement and you end up disappointed real bad sometimes. But yeah, that's that one. And then I think the other thing that I'm really expecting here is it just comes down to Stuart Skinner, right? Again, when I'm talking about run the table start to finish for the Oilers in terms of the standings and finishing in first place in the division and all that, Stuart Skinner, again, I said leave no doubt for Stu, right? Go out there, have a great season. Again, if the team starts better, you'll start better. You won't have to play catch up with your numbers the rest of the way home. And if the Oilers can capture some of that mid-season magic they had to recover their playoff positioning, one would think for the Oilers that Stuart Skinner is a goalie that not necessarily in the Vezina Trophy conversation in terms of the top three, but a guy that's somewhere inside the top 10, maybe even inside the top 5, if the Oilers really commit to the job they got done at times last year defensively and penalty killing wise. And then obviously Stuart Skinner leaves, no doubt himself, shows up, shows out, and has a great season. So I'm really looking forward to all those things. I think there's a little bit of start better, finish better. Of course, kind of some other guys getting helped out by a better lineup like Darnell Nurse. And that could go for a million other guys in the lineup, right? I think you're expecting a better season out of Janmark because he's going to play better minutes with better teammates that are more well equipped to score goals, like Connor Brown this year compared to Connor Brown last year. Adam Henrique's a huge addition, but no, I think easily too, it really does come down to you start better and you get better goaltending. Everything else in between throughout the season will figure itself out, and this is going to be one heck of a fun year for the Edmonton Oilers and us Edmonton Oilers fans. Friends, this is Dolynny TV. Thanks for being aboard here this afternoon. I am up on out of here.